Hello, I welcome all of you to another video in this series. Today we'll be starting with chapter 8. Kunti's two eldest sons were among the first in the village to start work at the tannery, and between them, they brought home more than a man's wages. You see, said Kunti, the tannery is a boon to us. Have I not said so since it began? We are no longer a village either, but a growing town. Does it not do you good just to think of it? Indeed, no, said I. For it is even as I said, and our money buys less and less. As for living in a town, if town this is, why there is nothing. I would fly from sooner if I could go back to the sweet quiet of village life. Now it is all noise and crowds everywhere, and rude young hooligans idling in the street, and dirty bazaars and uncouth behavior, and no man thinks of another but schemes only for his money. Now, this brings the adverse effects of industrialization and the urbanization of rural India. Words and words, said Kunti, stupid words. No wonder they call us senseless peasant women. But I am not and never will be. There is no earth in my breeding. If there were, you would be better for it, said I wrathfully, for then your values would be true. So, Kunti here is a not a moralistic woman. She is immoral. She works as a wanton, as a strumpet uh, in the village. So uh, she is not of good behavior. That's what Rukmani indirectly addresses her so. Kunti only shrugged her delicate shoulders and left us. She spent a lot of time making unnecessary journeys into the town where, with her good looks and provocative body, uh, she could be sure of admiration and more from the young men. At first, the women said it, and the men said they were jealous. Then men too began to notice and remark on it and wonder why her husband did nothing. Now, if I were in his place, they said, but they had ordinary wives, not a woman with fire and beauty in her, and skill to use them, besides which he was a quiet, dull man. Let her be, said Janaki. She is a trollop. A trollop is a prostitute, a woman of loose character, and is anxious only that there should be a supply of men. Her voice held both anger and bitter hopelessness for a long time. Now her husband's shops had been doing badly. He was unable to compete with the other big shopkeepers whom the easy money to be had from the tanners had drawn to the new town. A few days after our conversation, the shop finally closed down. Nobody asked, "Where do you go from here?" They did not say, "What is it to become of us?" We waited, and one day they came to bid us farewell, carrying their possessions, with their children trailing behind, all but the eldest whom the tannery had claimed. So it seems that one of the children had decided to stay in the tannery. Uh, but others left. Then they were gone, and the shopkeepers were glad that there were less competition, and the worker who moved into their hut was pleased to have a roof over his head. And we remembered them for a while, and then took up our lives again. So it brings here how the fast urbanization and the industrialization brings about homelessness and how they were eventually deprived of a home. In the early part, when we discuss on Kunti's character, as Kunti and Rukmani are foils, they are used by the writer to bring out the balanced overview of the social transformation, Kunti speaking for it and Rukmani against it. So it brings out a foil in this place. It was a great sprawling growth. So I should say that little by little, people leave the village. The tannery was in. invaded the village, the land of the people were taken. People working in the tannery had better lived as they had a regular income. It was a great sprawling growth, this tannery. It grew and flourished and spread. Not a month went by, but somebody's land was swallowed up, another building appeared. Night and day the tanning went on. A never-ending line of carts brought the raw material in. Thousands of skins, goat, calf, lizard, and snake skins, and took them away, tanned, dyed, and finished. It seemed impossible that markets should be found so such quantities, or that so many animals existed, but so it was incredible. In the part, not a month went by, but somebody's land was swallowed up, another billion appeared. It brings out how colonization leading to extraction of resources from the colony. So the tannery is like a monster to them. So in the part where we get Janaki leaving, Janaki's family leaving the village is an example of how social transformation brings displacement to the society. The officials of the tannery had increased as well. Apart from the white man we had seen first, who owned the tannery uh, and lived by himself, there were some 9 or 10 Muslims under him. They formed a little colony of their own, living midway between the town and open country, brick cottages with whitewashed walls. The men worked whitewashed walls and red tiled roofs. The men worked hard, some of them until late at night. The women, well, they worked quite a lot, and their way of life was quite different from others. What they did in their houses, I do not know, for they employed servants to do the work, but they stayed mostly indoors, or if they went out or at all, they were veiled in burqas. It was their religion, I was told. They would not appear before any man but their husband. Sometimes when I caught sight of a figure in a voluminous draperies, swishing through the streets under a blazing sun, or of a face peering through a window or shutter, I felt desperately sorry for them, deprived the ordinary pleasures of knowing warm sun and cool breeze upon their flesh, of walking out light and free, or of mixing with men who were working beside them. So, workers, as we know, workers who came from outside were very immoral, and in the end, we see how they formed a little colony. And in the description of Muslims, Markandeya brings out a description of the cultural disparity. They have their compensations, Kali said dryly. It is an easy life and no worry for the next meal and plenty always at hand. I would gladly wear a burqa and walk veiled for the rest of my life if I too could be sure of such things. For a year perhaps, I said, not forever. Who could endure such a filtering of sunlight and fresh air as they do? You chatter like a pair of monkeys, said Sakali's husband with less sense. What use the talk of exchange and so forth? So the husbands are quite sensible. Their life is theirs and yours is yours. Neither change nor exchange is possible. Once and once only, I actually saw one of the women close. I was taking a few vegetables to market when I saw her beckoning me to come indoors. I did so, and as soon as the door was closed, the woman threw off her veil, the better to select what she wanted. Her face was very pale, the bones small and fine. Her eyes were pale too, a curious light brown matching her silky hair. She took what she wanted and paid me. Her fingers, fair and slender, were laden with jewel rings, any one of which could have fed us for a year. She smiled at me as I went out, then quickly lowered the veil again about her face. I never went there again. There was something about those closed doors and shuttered windows that struck coldly at me, used as I was to open fields and the sky and the unfettered sight of the sun. So as the conclusion, we it brings out how the tannery has begun to influence the local community, and it brings out the ill effects of industrialization into the lives of people. And it brings up how city life corrupts the people. People who come to the village are strangers, and their behavior is improper as they bring immorality. We could see that in this section, in this chapter. So that would be the end of chapter 8, and we'll meet you in the next video with chapter 9. Thank you. And do subscribe to my channel.